While many directors in Hollywood are fine with toting the identity politics woke guidelines, one director is actually standing up to him. That's right, the director of the Boondock Saints and the Boondock Saints All Saints Day had a couple of choice words, especially for Star Wars.
'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side.
Hi everyone, my name is Jacob Berry. Welcome to the StudioJake vidcast where I talk about all things pop culture. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And don't forget to ring that little bell if you're watching on YouTube so you get notifications when I post a new vidcast, and consider becoming a channel member. On both my website, StudioJakeMedia.com, and here on this vidcast, I have often decried how woke identity politics have infiltrated the Star Wars galaxy. It has been a disaster for the company, and you can see that in motion constantly. It's not just my opinion. You see it happening right before your very eyes. It is shocking and stunning that a once great science fiction franchise has bent the knee to politics, and it is just so sad to watch it. There are still some people who have hope for Star Wars. I kind of consider myself one of them, although I will admit it's been harder to have hope. But hopefully, we'll have a new hope soon as more and more people, not just here in the YouTube Rumble space, but also out there in the Hollywood scene, are speaking out against political correctness. People like Zachary Levi and now Troy Duffy. So, this is according to HollywoodandToto.com. Christian Toto, who runs the website, is a friend of the channel. I've had him on several times, including on live streams as well as vidcast. And I just want to shout him out because he obviously wrote this article. Boondock Saints director blast woke Star Wars. Troy Duffy says Disney team should burn in hell for crushing franchise. Troy Duffy doesn't hold back ever. We saw the downside of that approach in Overnight, the 2003 documentary about the Boondock Saints director's sudden rise to fame and subsequent struggles. An older, more congenial Duffy joined the Film Threat podcast this week to talk about more Boondock Saints projects. He offered a fascinating glimpse of behind-the-scenes Hollywood in the process. Co-host Chris Gore, since the director might have sharp views on Hollywood's woke obsession, pressed him on the matter. That set Duffy off. He started by attacking Disney for buying the Star Wars franchise and, in the minds of many, crashing it into the ground. May you burn in hell for what you did to Star Wars and continue to do. That was sacrilegious, man, Duffy said. He likely referred to Disney Plus fare like The Acolyte, torched by online critics for excessively woke storytelling tics. That's part of a larger critique of woke storytelling, where the message and agenda too often lap the creative process. You don't say, I'm going to make a golf movie because golf is hot, the director said. You don't say you're going to make an LGBTQ character because that's what's going on there right now and that's what people want to see. That mindset starts leaking in on directors and writers that you're choosing. These reasons have nothing to do with art or creativity whatsoever. It's obvious why woke sucks. It's obviously why it's failing. It's taking the longest time to kill this thing, he added, saying even established stars like Sean Penn are finally speaking out about the cultural scourge. These guys are coming out and saying some of the greatest movies we've ever made couldn't be made now, Duffy said, like his favorite comedy of all time, Blazing Saddles. Even a guy like Mel Brooks would never be allowed to make it today. He said, we're shooting ourselves in the foot in the entertainment business and it has to stop. So I want you to head on over to HollywoodandToto.com and read the article there, as well as several of his other articles and movie reviews. His team does a fantastic job keeping everyone up to date. He also has a podcast that is available here on YouTube. The channel is Hollywood and Toto, like the website. It's also available on other podcast platforms. So yeah, I am not familiar with the Boondock Saints. I've never seen them. I've never watched one or two. I probably should after hearing him talk like that. But yeah, this goes to a broader problem we're seeing not just in Star Wars, but just taking Star Wars for an example. Now, sometimes Star Wars fans get a little touchy-feely. I'll be the first to admit this. We see this with the backlash to the prequels, which are awesome, and I'm glad I'm old enough to be able to say that. When Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace came out, I was only 11 and I loved it. But because I was only 11, I didn't have the gravitas that I do now, being able to speak behind a microphone and say it. And it's so cool now that, especially with how Disney sequels have become so derided upon their release that people are going back and checking out the prequels. You can see the shift. Now, Disney hasn't put woke identity politics into all their stuff. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, the first two seasons of The Mandalorian, the first season of Star Wars Visions, the final season of Star Wars Clone Wars, those didn't have anything like what we see today, where it's like this obsession with racial identity, with who is dating who, with these neo pronouns and whatnot. It's just a big joke, and it's so sad to see a once great franchise become corrupted by that rot. And it's not just affecting Star Wars. I mean, Doctor Who fans, they probably have it the worst out of all of us. I also understand they did an adaptation of Around the World in 80 Days recently on the BBC that was just full of this garbage. They took Jules Verne's masterful novel and just inserted a whole bunch of far left Marxist communist dialogue and themes into it when it was just a fun thrill ride and adventure for you as a child to be able to see the world through this amazing man's adventure. It's so sad to see that happen. I mean, we saw it with He-Man. We saw it with Lord of the Rings through Amazon's Rings of Power. We saw it happen to the Wheel of Time. We're seeing it happen in real time to Dungeons and Dragons as well as Warhammer 40K. It's happening all over the place, to video games, to board games, to film, to TV shows, where it's just becoming this corruption. We saw it with Robin Hood, right? That Canadian TV show. We saw it with Madam Web, with the race swapping of Maddie Franklin, which that one confuses me a little bit because there are already slingers, if you will, that's what they were called before the Spider-Verse came along, who were, a person of color. So why didn't they just get one of those characters? Why did they have to race swap Maddie Franklin? It's because they're creatively bankrupt and they feel like they have to just slap on a label to do it. By the way, Maddie Franklin in the comic books is the worst of the Spider Women. Let's be real. Jessica Drew and Julia Carpenter are the top ones. All that to say, I think that it's going to take a few years for this Hollywood to detox from the woke mind virus. We're going to see it take several years because, like I think I said in a previous vidcast, I once worked on a documentary series. It was kind of lower budget than a Hollywood production, obviously, and that was kind of in production when I joined the company that I worked for at the time. They were in what you would call pre-production. They were planning it, they were planning the stages of it, and then it slowly evolved until it was finally released. Just to see that long 2-year process just to get a smaller documentary made for a lower budget that was good, in my opinion. I think the team did an amazing job just to see that process. Some of these movies, they're 5 years in development. And so, yeah, it's going to take a few years for that woke mind virus to slowly creep out. Now, maybe along the way, some film productions will intercept it in time and they'll put together a better script before things actually start shooting. I would like to see it happen with Star Wars as well. Going back to the topic at hand, I think that with Star Wars, it's not going to change until Kathleen Kennedy is gone. It seems like Kevin Feige may be trying to right the ship a little bit, like Deadpool and Wolverine, convincing he needs to do that. But I don't know if that's going to be the case with Star Wars as long as Kathleen Kennedy is around. I read an article just the other day that said she's trying to get a contract extension to 2027. If that happens, Star Wars will be as dead a brand as Willow is at this point, as Indiana Jones is. There is no reason on this planet the Disney board should renew her contract. She has been an abject failure. I've stopped reporting on because I remember shortly around the time that Rise of Skywalker came out, every other day it seemed like, oh, Kathleen Kennedy is going to be fired. And I jumped on the bandwagon because I actually thought it was going to happen. She had produced so many failures at that point. But now I'm not so sure. Whenever I hear that she wants a contract extension, they might give it to her because the Disney board is blind. They want to blame you, the viewer, and it makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense to blame the audience for not accepting the slop that they're given. Hopefully Kathleen Kennedy will be let go and they'll put someone in charge like Jon Favreau or Tony Gilroy, and that Star Wars can course correct and we can see it go the way it's supposed to. But I highly doubt that it will happen anytime soon. If you like that video, be sure to give it a like, share it out to all your friends, leave me a comment, tell what you think, and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, ring that little bell so you get notifications when I post a new vidcast. and consider becoming a channel member. If you don't want to support me on big tech, click on the link to my locals community. It's in the description of the video. You can send me tips or become a monthly subscriber. I've got all kinds of cool exclusive content on there, so go on over, check it out. You can also purchase one of my novels. I've got Blessed Child is my latest. It's a fantasy romance novella. I've got the Seven Royals series. The third one is on its way. It's my high fantasy series. And then I've got the supernatural thriller Cacophony. It was my very first novel. Go on Amazon, pick one or all four up, and leave me a 5-star review. It really helps out small indie creators like myself. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.
Cause I've been living life right like I